Police opened fire while trying to stop newspaper theft in Hong Kong. Firebomb attacks on Jimmy Lai's residence and the Nix Media headquarters. And in Paris, more than 1 million join a march against terrorism.
Good evening. Firebombs were thrown overnight at the Kowloon home of media tycoon Jimmy Lai and at the headquarters of Nix Media in Tseung Kwan O. No one was injured in the two incidents, but police are treating it as arson. Stephanie Choi reports.
Apple Daily released footage recorded by surveillance cameras outside Jimmy Lai's residence on Kadoorie Avenue. At around 1 a.m., a 7-seater vehicle could be seen parked outside Lai's gate. A person later got out of the vehicle and hurled a flaming glass bottle towards the entrance of Lai's residence. He fled soon afterwards. By the time police arrived, the security guard had extinguished the fire, leaving behind scorch marks. Around the same time that Lai's home came under attack, another 7-seater vehicle pulled up outside the headquarters of Nix Media in Tseung Kwan O. Someone threw a firebomb at the main gate of the building and did the same at another entrance. Less than an hour after the firebombs were thrown, police found 2 torched 7-seater vehicles on Chak On Road in Sham Shui Po and Sham Mong Road in Cheung Sha Wan. The vehicles had no license plates on them. Apple Daily chief editor Yip Yat Kin visited Lai's residence at around noon and expressed concern that attacks against Nix Media might escalate. He said the company has stepped up security measures. Police have classified the incident as arson. Today, Secretary for Justice Rimsky-Yun condemned the attack. Regardless of the victim's political beliefs or social rank, Hong Kong as a lawful society will not tolerate and will condemn such acts of violence, Yun said. He added that the Department of Justice will follow up on the incident as it would other criminal acts. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
A police officer fired 4 shots while chasing a newspaper thief in Hong Kong in the early hours of this morning. The police refused to say whether this incident is connected with the firebomb attacks on former Nix Media chairman Jimmy Lai's residence and the Nix Media building earlier in the morning. Owen Fong reports.
The shots were fired on Chatham Road South near the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Many copies of the Apple Daily were scattered on the road. Police officers wearing bulletproof vests were sent to the area. Officers initially closed down 2 carriageways to facilitate police investigations. At around 9:45 a.m., the area was expanded to 4 Yau Ma Tei-bound carriageways. Officers from the police tactical unit formed a line to search for the bullets on the road. The search operation lasted for around half an hour, and by 11:30 a.m., all 4 carriageways had been reopened. But none of the bullets were found. According to the police, a team of plainclothes officers on anti-theft patrol in Hong Kong saw a man stealing newspapers on Tak Man Street around 5 o'clock this morning. The newspapers were left on the roadside waiting to be picked up by the vendor. When the officers tried to intervene, the suspect, who's in his 20s, boarded a blue minivan which was also carrying another woman. A sergeant managed to get into the vehicle, but the suspect suddenly drove off to Chatham Road. It is believed that the officer fired his weapon 4 times while he struggled with the culprit. The sergeant was eventually pushed out of the van. Police Superintendent Lau Shu Wing says the vehicle ran over the officer's right calf as it sped off. The injured officer was taken to Queen Elizabeth Hospital for treatment. The police are appealing to witnesses to contact the Kowloon West Regional Crime Unit. Meanwhile, police have refused to comment on whether this incident is related to the petrol bomb attacks on former Nix Media chairman Jimmy Lai's house and the Nix Media building in Tseung Kwan O. But it's not the first time theft has happened in the area. Last Friday, 400 copies of newspaper were stolen from another store in the vicinity of the incident this morning. A representative of newspaper retailers said unattended newspapers were stolen occasionally. He said the culprit in this morning's incident could be someone working in the trade. Owen Fung, TVB News.
There are renewed calls for international cooperation to combat extremism following last night's rally in Paris to remember the victims of last week's terror attacks in the French capital. More than 1 million people marched in Paris alone in what was described as the largest demonstration in French history. Rallies were held in other parts of France, with protesters united in their desire to defend values such as free speech and liberty. Paris was a city united last night. Young and old, religious and non-religious, men, women and children, citizens of France and the world. They came together in a show of defiance against a poisonous ideology used to justify murder and mayhem. It was in that spirit that more than 40 world leaders, including Jewish and Muslim statesmen, linked arms to lead more than 1 million people through the streets of Paris. It was an unprecedented rally to pay tribute to the victims of last week's terror attacks, which left 17 people dead, many of whom worked for the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo. Amid a sea of flags and banners, President François Hollande and the others set off from the city's Place de la République. Even opposition leaders from some of the biggest EU nations were there.
I wanted to be here from the United Kingdom because we stand in solidarity with the people of France today.
The United States was represented by its ambassador, the Deputy Secretary of State, and Attorney General Eric Holder, who called for a unified stance against the extremist ideology, which was used to justify last week's atrocities.
Only if we work together through sharing of information, by pooling our resources, will we be able to ultimately defeat those who are in a struggle with us about our fundamental values.
But there was criticism later that Washington did not send a higher-ranking official to represent America. Secretary of State John Kerry announced he was heading to France this week for talks on countering extremism. But he rejected charges the US was aloof, saying he and President Barack Obama had been deeply engaged with the French government. At least 3.7 million people took part in yesterday's marches across France, with more than 1.4 million rallying in Paris alone. The rally began in respectful silence for the victims from Charlie Hebdo and those who died at a kosher supermarket where militants took hostages in a separate attack. The attacks have tested France's proud commitment to its liberties, which authorities may now curtail to ensure greater security. And around the world, other marches and vigils also delivered messages of unity and defiance. James Aiken with that story.
In major cities around the world, the spectacles were as impressive as the turnouts. To show London's solidarity with the people of Paris, major landmarks, including Trafalgar Square, the National Gallery, and Tower Bridge, were illuminated in the colors of the French flag.
The people who committed this attack, and that they are a very small minority, and they are not reflective of French Muslims or British Muslims or 99.9% of Muslims around the world.
In New York, a city that knows the horror of terror attacks firsthand, the Empire State Building was lit in similar fashion, and then went dark in tribute to the victims of the deadly attacks. In the U.S. Capitol, thousands took part in a silent march organized by the French embassy.
It's frustrating to be abroad while your own country is attacked. So it's a way for all the French in Washington, D.C. to gather, and to send this message to the motherland.
The global outpouring of solidarity also extended to Latin American countries. At a vigil in Rio de Janeiro, this demonstrator said freedom of expression must not just apply to all faiths, but also to those who are not religious. Rallies and vigils were also held in the Middle East. Dozens of Egyptian journalists who feel their freedom of expression is under pressure took to the streets of Cairo to show solidarity with their French counterparts. But not all events were as peaceful. Soon after a rally began in the center of the Turkish capital, a man, apparently upset that not enough attention is being paid to Muslim terror victims, tried to cut off marchers. He was quickly taken away by police. For Israelis, the deadly siege at the kosher supermarket in Paris has particularly strong resonance.
We're very close to the people who were attacked. We knew some of the people. It's an absolute catastrophe.
Around the world, similar tributes, but also similar sentiments that after the Paris attacks, the world is not the same. James Aiken, TVB News.
And a widening investigation is helping police learn more about the Paris gunmen. They're also hoping to track down their accomplices. An internet video surfaced featuring Ahmed Koulibaly, the man who killed a French policewoman and 4 people at a kosher supermarket. In the video, he pledges allegiance to Islamic State and explains how the attacks would unfold. Police want to find the person who shot and posted the video, which was edited after the attacks. Koulibaly also claims he worked with the Kouachi brothers, who stormed the offices of the Charlie Hebdo newspaper. The brothers claim they were affiliated with Al-Qaeda in Yemen. The United States considers the Yemen branch the most dangerous offshoot of the Al-Qaeda network. Koulibaly's partner, Hayat Boumediene, is wanted in connection with the killings and is believed to have fled to Syria.
South Korean President Park Geun-hye announced today she is open to holding a summit meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un without any precondition. Park's comments came on the heels of Kim's New Year's address. In it, the North Korean leader stated that if the atmosphere and environment are right, there is no reason not to hold a high-level summit. But just last Friday, Pyongyang rejected a call by South Korea's parliament for a resumption of negotiations. In addition to addressing North Korea's human rights, the South is pushing the North to allow the reunion between families still separated by the Korean War. The two sides are still technically at war since the 1950-53 Korean War ended in a truce, not a peace treaty.
And still ahead in the news tonight. One of the black boxes of the ill-fated AirAsia jet recovered. A bird flu outbreak in parts of Taiwan. And a poll shows most people name housing as a top issue that should be tackled in the CE's policy address.
The most extreme winter sports. What does it take to be the fastest, the highest, and the most dangerous? Tonight, Super Bodies at 9:30 on Pearl.
There's a half-dozen stealth drones under terrorist control.
An arms dealer named Carl Rask. I think he knows where she is.
Bauer needs to go in there.
My country will suffer if you're wrong.
You want to hand me over to Rask?
It's the only way I know how to make this work.
Answer my question. Why are you really here?
Tuesday, 24. Live another day at 10:40 on Pearl.
做父母嘅點夠瞓啊？但係望住 BB 總係百看不厭。好想多啲陪佢，想佢學得開心，學得快。
衛視明白父母盡心盡力，100年嚟一直為 BB 學習同健康出力。
BB 學嘢聰明，付出都係開心嘅。
Thank you, Mama.
Don't miss Chief Executive C.Y. Leung's policy address. Live Wednesday morning at 10:59 on Pearl. The time now is 7:44. The time check was brought to you by Seiko.
Welcome back to TVB News.